square on the TV screen.
Okay. I started to watch this. Interesting.
It's just not a good way to conduct business.
Yeah, it has its limitations, no doubt about it, unfortunately.
Square on the TV.
Looks
Okay.
good, Diane, thanks. Bye-bye.
Well, that's good. All right. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. It's certainly great to see you and hear you as well. Any introductions or anyone new we need to introduce at this point? We certainly want to welcome you, Dr. Newbill, today to the Finance Committee meeting. And of course, everyone else, we welcome you as well. I'm waving at you. You do that down south here.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, can I just say, I will represent certainly at this meeting, but until and unless we identify someone else from the city of Richmond. So it may, and you mentioned one of the persons, it may be Mr. Addison or one of the other members, but until we, get a more permanent designee, then I'll attend representing Richmond.
Well, let me just say, we greatly appreciate that. It's always a pleasure, Madam
Thank you.
With the organization to have you, it means a great deal.
Yeah, I just thought if it would be okay, I could introduce some of the other folks that are
Please, Mom.
in person on the call.
Yes.
Wanted to first and foremost introduce Dan Van Dornick, who's with us this afternoon. Dan is our interim director of finance, as you know,
Okay.
probably from other discussions and meetings. He's our contact finance and is officially employed with VML Vaco Finance. So we're really
Okay.
grateful for that support.
Yeah.
On the Zoom today, we have Charles Ramsey from Henrico County. As you know, their team, and mostly through Charles, has been providing support to us during our staff transition. So Charles, thanks for being here today. Jill Slinger, who you all are familiar with, has been helping us with the grab back to prior financial reporting periods. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the business. And then Mr. Gregory here is, I think, just here in observe mode today in case there's any questions about dues.
Excellent.
Jim's here though. Didn't I steer up?
She's probably in her other engagement office, and we'll tune in when we need
Well,
her
since
to
she's up there.
chime
then-
in. Yeah, she's logged in on Zoom, but she's
Hey.
she is.
Hey, there she is. We knew you were nearby. Anyway, so wonderful. Thank you, Martha. Do we need to do a roll call, Diane?
Please, if that would be okay.
I think that would be appropriate to do a roll call for documentation purposes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Blackwood? Mr. Holland?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Dr. Newbell?
Here.
Ms. Page?
Here.
Ms. O'Bannon? Thank you.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, why don't we roll into old business, item 2 on the agenda today. To discuss December, January, February minutes. Has anyone had a chance to read them, or would you like anything discussed from the minutes before we have them approved, if we can approve? I did read through from a few moments ago. I did read through.
I did say, I'll move for approval.
Thank you. It's been moved, and may I have a second regarding the minutes?
I second, Mr. Chairman, Patricia Page.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, have a vote for approval. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And one abstention, Mr. Chair. I was not present.
Thank you. One extension, and all others, aye. Okay, and noes, nays, hearing none, the minutes are approved with, as recorded, with one extension. All right, very good. Now, item B, financial improvement update.
Thank you.
Madam Director, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I will just simply share that as I introduce the staff folks that have been working with us the last 2 months, want to say first with gratitude to everyone, but then to dig in a little bit to update. We had a good discussion at the last Finance Committee meeting about sort of the separation of responsibilities. So Jill Slinger and Diane Fusco good afternoon, have been taking the lead on taking a look back at the year-to-date financial reports and reviewing our any outstanding reimbursement requests and getting those submitted. So I will tell you, this is a little bit of a preview to the February financial statements, that is definitely a major contributor to the performance for February. But they've done a great job of being able to go back and make sure that we were not leaving any reimbursement requests unsubmitted. So thanks, Jill, for your work, and I'll certainly let you speak to any maybe of the specifics of the findings, but generally speaking, I think we didn't find anything that was out of order, just simply some things that needed to be finished and submitted and completed. So as you know, she was able to help us with the Ramsey in the completion of the amendments, adjustments to the December financials with regard to that pay period question. And I think we've, for lack of a better word, been able to kind of achieve the cleanup that we needed to do. And then Dan and his efforts has been taking responsibility for the look forward. So he will be preparing the March financial statements and will be the lead person presenting those to you instead of me, and is working on evaluating our practices this fiscal year to date to be able to make some recommendations for how we would treat recordation of certain expenses and things like that, just so we can get a much more clear picture on a monthly basis with our financial statements about where we are and where we're going. So, I think he's probably spent only about maybe 30 hours with us so far, but just even today, it was great to have the conversations with him that I've had. And I think that he's picked up the business very quickly, and he's been able to work with Jill and Diane, and we'll be leaning on Charles as we move forward too to review things. But we certainly, I think, have been able to mobilize a really solid team to be able to talk through any issues and concerns as they come up through this transition.
Let me get your name again.
It's Dan Van Dornick.
Van
Van Dornick.
Dornick. Okay. And well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
But here, I believe it.
No, thank you.
And then I do want to just give some special, recognition of Diane. Diane has been really the glue that has kind of kept all of the different pieces and team members of this together. And so, Diane, thank you for everything that you have done. She has stepped up in a really big way, and I think most of you know already that she's been an invaluable resource to the agency throughout the time that she's been here, but has really stepped in and I think been a really shown really solid promise to be able to play a larger role in our grants administration and that connection point, not just among the existing financial team staff, but will be, I think, on the long term, a good connection point between our program managers and the finance department, which is obviously very desperately needed. So, Diane, thank you for everything that you've been doing and tracking down different pieces of information and being able to compile things and getting the billings submitted for the different programs. So.
Well, I join in thanking you as well. We appreciate you. Diane, thank you so much for stepping in and stepping up as we update.
Everybody appreciates your step back. Just kidding.
Okay. Yeah. So we appreciate Bob and the team that you're working through. We appreciate the team you've assembled and the work you're doing thus far. Numbers are already looking good, looking at at February 21. So that's very, very positive. The numbers are looking very good. So that's great. So we'll discuss the February financial statements a little bit later. Anything else? Let's talk about office space planning update.
Yes, so that has been, as you know, a topic of discussion regularly for this committee. And so I did want to share with you that the owners of this building, this property, did approve the completion of a space plan for our occupied space for them to consider as kind of the first step in what a discussion about renegotiating our current lease would look like at great cost. So we have been able to take the work that we have done with Baskerville, and they have been able to create some preliminary drawings that could imagine what a reduced footprint of our occupied space currently could be reconfigured to look like to meet our program needs. So that has been provided in draft form to the property owner. I will share that it appears to have been received positively enough that they've asked if we're ready to take the next step for cost estimations. And so, as you know, I think that when Mr. Berkey addressed you at the last meeting where he attended, we talked a little bit about the need to make a decision around project management and who would be responsible for that and how we would fund that work. Because when you get into doing cost estimations and overseeing the construction and things like that, I think I do not believe that that's something that's in my skill set or the skill set of staff members on our team. So. We've set up a briefing with Chairman Spoonhour and Vice Chair Winslow to be able to talk this through, as obviously this is going to be a discussion that's going to carry into the next fiscal year as well, so that they can get up to speed to where you all have been in this discussion. And my thinking is that we need both this committee and the executive team to give a little bit of a decision, direction to us about how we want to proceed.
And can I ask this, is he doing this plan and what is he, who is the person he's brought on, an architect or something, or?
Yes, ma'am. So we engaged Baskerville this summer. They're a local firm to help us do a space planning
But I mean,
assessment.
is this the person who owns the building or your landlord?
Yes.
Okay, so the landlord is planning to reduce the number of square feet or rearrange it or something?
No, they have expressed interest in us extending our lease.
Well, I
agreement with
figured
them.
that. but-
Yeah. And so, as a part of that process, they agreed to pay the cost of an evaluation of our footprint and how it could be amended to meet our needs. So, as you know, we lease 13,000 square feet. We don't believe we need all of that.
Yeah.
And so, we've gotten their approval at their cost to undertake a space planning exercise to see what would be the footprint and how could that fit.
Now, the other part of that is that we've been paying for Class A space, but it's not even Class B, it's more like Class C. So is he planning on lowering the rent in doing this? I mean, the amount we pay in rent?
At this stage, all of that is, I think, open to negotiation. From what I understand from Mr. Berkey, the process would include understanding what the cost for a reconfiguration and build out would be. And then they would determine how, they would run their numbers and we would run our numbers to see, ideally we would not pay for that build out, and also would realize a savings on the per square foot cost over what we're paying now. But we don't know at this point in time what the landlord is open to.
The other part is their lease was pretty long last time, can be shorter, I mean, all that.
All of those things could be part of the discussion on the table. I think you're exactly right. The term, would need to be something that the board is comfortable with. And as we work through this process, all of those things would need to be points of negotiation.
We did look at all those other locations.
Yeah, and I don't think that other locations are off the table. Your
Okay.
instruction was really just to keep both channels moving. And so this is the update on the current channel. We're still a little early to be able to enter into discussions with potential other landlords or property owners, but this will give you a good comparative data set on what a stay in the current address would look like.
I'm going to caution us from trying to get into something where it's not our expertise. We've already hired people to help look at facilities. This facility just needs to be another one in the pot. And I think we've got to make sure we don't go negotiating on our own.
Agreed.
But we need that all to be going through the same people that are looking at all those places.
I just wanted to make sure that all those others aren't off the table.
They are
That was
not.
the key.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that you want to negotiate from a position of strength. And if there are one or two alternatives, then when you start negotiating, if you want to stay here, or if everybody says you want to stay here, you need to have something in your back pocket.
Absolutely, I
So
understand.
nothing should be off the table. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. Go ahead.
I'm just concerned that we don't allow our current landlord to try and sneak in the back door
Yeah.
and negotiate directly with us rather than having
Oh, I see what
our
you're saying.
professionals doing the work for us.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
All right.
I'm in agreement. Yeah, because at this point, and it's my understanding, at this time, we were looking at other options as well. Those options are on the table. If they were better in terms of the duration and the rates, then we were going to certainly entertain those. And I'm not sure if you'll be prepared to discuss that with Chairman Spoonhauser and Vice Chair Winslow.
Really,
Where are they at in this process?
really the meeting with them is to catch them up.
Oh, catch them up, okay.
To what you all have already discussed.
Okay, okay.
I briefed Mr. Spoonhauer when we do our
Okay.
weekly meetings, but just to be able to sit down with Mr. Berkey,
Okay,
who you all have met, he has not met him, and to
Okay.
be able to talk that through. And
yeah,
I just want to reiterate, the efforts that have been undertaken thus far have been led by Mr. Berkey. We have not had direct contact with the property owner or their representatives. Mr. Berkey has. Mr. Gregory has been in the loop during all of that as well. The space planning exercise that Baskerville, the firm that they've authorized to do that work, is simply at this stage in the game another effort to collect data for you. It is not at this point in time any sort of a commitment that we are going exclusively down the road of occupying this location.
okay,
It's simply to be able to gather the data, just
Yeah.
those questions that Mrs. O'Bannon asked, to be able to understand what that scenario could look like while we collect the data for what an alternative scenario for other locations would look like as well.
Aye.
very good, very good. Other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go back. I just made a statement a while ago that may have sounded improper about coming in the back door. That's not exactly what I meant. I really meant that we needed to keep this all together. And I didn't want to insinuate in any way that our current landlord was doing anything behind.
I didn't take it.
I didn't think anybody did, but just to be safe after I said it, I figured that we are public, will clarify.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, okay, we appreciate that. Anyone else any other comments relative to this process and the timing thereof? So we're still open at this point. I think that's very clear. We haven't settled on an option specifically. We're still gathering, as you stated so well, Martha, data to make a decision. Correct. Okay, very good. Other comments? Questions? Okay, and of course, next, please keep us abreast of the timing as well, Martha, in terms of where we be, in terms of the data and decision-making process. Okay, very good. There are no other questions. Let's move to new business. Item A, February financial statements. Where are we financially?
Well, I am pleased to say that our February results are very positive.
Yes, they are.
They close a significant portion of the gap in our year-to-date operating net loss for the year. So again, sort of skipping to the chase, the year-to-date net loss has been reduced to $11,909. You'll see that on
Yes.
the third page of the performance profit and loss statement.
Very good.
That is a significant increase in our net position for the year. And again, largely due to not because February's results are in any way, I think, indicative of what March, April, May, and June will be, but more so because of the efforts of Jill and Diane to go and catch up on the year-to-date billing. So, we are not out of the woods, but we are, I think, demonstrating some good progress. As I mentioned, Mr. Van Dornick will be taking the lead on the preparation of the March financial statements. There, I do expect to see some of our expenses for the month increase over what you've seen in prior months. We've had a practice in place this year where we were amortizing expenses over a 12-month period, and I think we want to try to get them accrued all in the month of March, if I'm speaking that correctly, and be able to give you a really solid, accurate picture of where we are in committed expenditures and realized revenues at the end of that third quarter. So I do think it's good news. I just want to make sure that it's very clear, you know, we are not expecting to see a month of March of $36,000 net income.
Okay,
That is not all just the month of February's results. That's a product of the efforts to be able to catch up on those outstanding receivables and billings.
very good on that. In regards to that, so that as of March, will position us through the third quarter. So will we have a good idea of where the fourth quarter will end up projected? Estimate projected based on the budget where the fourth quarter should end.
We're, based on discussion today, we're tracking to be able to give that projection to you at your March, at your April
meeting.
committee meeting as well, so that you have that. And we are viewing April, May, and June to be our benchmarks for purposes of understanding what a typical month should look like for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, that's good to know.
I suppose that's a question. I mean, I understand we're trying to get that corrected, but when I look at these, I was mentioned earlier that we're at 46.5% of income of what we anticipated to be here at this time. And same thing back on expenses, about 48, I think it is there. And yet we're 8 months into the year. Do we anticipate, so back to the same question, I'm asking a different way. At the end of the year, do we expect to have income all the way up, or is this going to be an adjusted downward for both expenses and?
Yes, it will be adjusted downward. A large portion of that is because our annual budget for both revenues and for expenses was based on the expectation that we would get approval to add those 3 new positions, and we did not do that. So our salaries will come in lower, and the revenue associated with what we funded those salaries will come in lower.
Does that pretty well reflect the difference between the expected 72% and the 48% that we're at now?
I think the lagging in revenue is a piece of that, but it's also the lead. And so we have had higher than expected lead for this fiscal year, and so that is another part of why we're not seeing the revenue, why the revenue is trailing. And so, you know, I do expect that our revenue is going to be down because of the lower billing, but the lower billing, a piece of that is also the staff leave.
Well, do we have a good idea on the expectations for staff leave for fourth quarter?
We do. Every month we're getting reports from staff about what they're planning to take so that we can program that in, and that's part of this recast or projection for the year end so that we can really nail that.
Good.
If I can, I'll refer you specifically to the oops, I think we're missing a page in this thing. The back page, so we're missing the expense side of the financials.
Do you have them 10, 11, 12?
I don't have page 11 on my copy.
Yeah, we'll miss that letter. Yeah, we'll miss that letter.
I've got it printed out.
It's funny, it does say page 11. Okay. Do you have it?
I have it because I brought it.
I don't have it. That's past me.
Sort of noticed that.
So if you look at page 11,
Okay.
line 6101 for leave wages. So you'll see there that
We're pretty much done to budget.
we've budgeted $150,000, and year to date we are at $143,000.
So we.
So we're watching that very carefully because we are still, you know, 4 months to go.
Right.
And so we're watching that very carefully. And so that would be an example of a line item that in this recast, we need to make sure that we bring to your attention.
Okay. So we don't anticipate the 150 increasing significantly at this point.
I think I think based on what we're
Budget.
hearing from staff on what they plan to take, through the spring, that we are going to exceed that $150,000 budget for legal
The
wages.
150 did not include the anticipated leave that they took earlier, making up.
Right, that 150,000 is the budget that we had adopted last June. So, when we made the policy changes and those things, we need to be able to accommodate, staff taking up leave time.
Can't you tell them they can't take any leave? I mean, what's wrong with doing that? I mean, I've been told that before, but just.
We have 2 staff members that are at risk of losing their earned leave if they don't take it. So I think in those circumstances, we're limited in that. We've already made that extension from December to June 30th for them so that they can have that, if you wanted to make another extension, we could look at that and see whether that would be a viable option. So those are the kinds of things that we're monitoring and are looking at in of those projections for where we will end up at year end. But I would say, overall, we still are on the balance sheet, looking at that, we are still operating without having to draw on the fund balance, so that is good news. We've still been able to maintain that excess over the $1 million threshold, which of course has been a goal that we've been focused on, and that is in part a result of the special assessment, the second year of those contributions coming in, but we're ahead of that objective.
Okay, that's very good. And on April report, we'll have an outline of the fund balance, and the special assessments as well. Right.
We can include that.
Yeah, if you include that in April, that would be good.
Okay.
So we can have that. Now give us a projection. We want to be projecting toward the end of the year as to where our financial position is going to be cash-wise with that, so that we'll know whether we do dip into reserves or we don't. That'll be important to know. My understanding is my feeling and gut feeling is that we should and will not. However, I just want to ascertain that. And looking at the fund balance data will help us know that.
I agree with you, I think not to use it for us.
Okay. Right. I don't anticipate we will at this point. I'm feeling a lot better. I can tell you, I'm feeling a lot better trend-wise. Other comments about that or needs?
Well, if we could get what we pay in rent lower, it's like to point that out, give you more money. So,
Yeah, there's a big item. Bigger item.
Yeah, and on that note, I know we've discussed this before, but Dan and I were talking about it earlier today, so I think it's on my mind, but, we certainly do have savings over the last 12 months in certain areas, but not in many. Our remote operating did not have an impact on our rent, for example, and so we are still continuing to incur expenses even in this strange last 12 months of operating. And we are going to continue to look for grant programs to help us cover the expenses of some of the COVID mitigation activities that we've undertaken that were not expected. But to date, the commission has not been eligible for any of the relief programs.
That's what I'm about to ask. Are we eligible for an CARES funding and this new dispensation of 1.93?
No, we're not. And we, so far, the only resource that I have been able to identify that we could be a candidate for is the FEMA public assistance funding. And so we've had a call with a technical assistance provider with counsel on how we could apply for that funding, but we are not a recipient of CARES funding
PPP?
No, they're not eligible for PPP.
PPP, okay.
So this has been a challenge for organizations like ours because we don't have access to some of those traditional relief programs that are available to other entities and local governments.
Okay.
So, but we're going to continue to work on that front. And we've submitted comments both to the governor's office and the Department of Housing and Community Development with regard to that issue and the fact that we are left out, if you will, from the eligibility in those relief programs that have been state funded.
Well, good thing too, we haven't had any travel expenses, so not significant travel, so those are areas, and I'm trying to think of any other areas where there might be possible concessions that we can obtain due to COVID, but I can't think of any at this point.
We did renegotiate the copier leases.
Okay.
Diana and Terry were able to do that, and so this financial statement, I think, is still in transitional billing, but
Okay,
you'll see a reduction in those expenses, I think, in March.
Great.
And as you noted, there are, postage, printing costs are going to show lower just because of the copier renegotiation. But, we have been able to save in some of those operational areas. We're not buying as much coffee, things like that.
Is the electricity lower or?
We don't pay separate electricity
Right, so that's in the
utilities,
rent?
so it's included in the rent. Yeah.
okay. Just one last question. I'm always digging deep, and digging deep is, I would say, as a landlord, considered any concessions or anything given, I guess lack of office utilization, has he indicated or intimated anything to you about anything that he may give?
No,
He
we have
has
not
not.
asked for any concessions. We do know that at least one major tenant has left this building.
Okay,
Did not renegotiate their lease when it ended.
Okay.
We have not asked for any sort of concessions due to COVID on our rent.
Is there some reason why you haven't?
Don't have the indication that it would be made available, but I would be happy if you'd like to submit a letter formally requesting.
Well, I don't know why not. I mean,
Okay.
maybe it should happen, particularly since if your electric bill was lower and you weren't in here, that he could, I could word it somehow just to
yeah,
ask.
yeah, I'm with you.
The worst thing that could happen is they say no.
That's right, that's right.
That's all I'm thinking.
I'm with you.
What is
Yeah.
that?
And with your past, it's
I'm with
never
you. Okay, very good. I think we should, especially as we near toward negotiations too, I think that would be certainly something would be
Be
helpful
an
to us.
indication of what we're hoping.
Yeah, well,
for in the
in
future.
negotiation, as we consider
If he
options.
doesn't lower it, then you
Hold
can
on.
say, well, you wouldn't even lower it.
I'll work with Mr. Gregory and Mr. Berkey to put
Okay.
the request together and submit it.
All right.
I mean, everybody that I know who's renting a house or something asked their landlord if they could get like a month,
Mhm.
later or off, or, can I pay you half now? And,
Mhm.
I mean, everybody that I know that's rented is,
Mhm.
a lot of people, I should say.
Mhm.
So I don't see why, some sort of.
Yeah, I think it's worth a try. I agree.
ask.
And, we don't have any interest expense that we're paying anything like that we could do a concession on. So
Thinking.
I don't have anything in that area, but those are certainly to look at. So I appreciate that, Martha.
And I
Thank you.
point out, we're not getting any COVID money too.
Yeah, yeah,
Even though we're a
exactly.
government agency, we're not getting, he may say, well, you're getting all that stuff in the feds.
Mhm.
I'd be sure that gets in here in a sentence or two.
Okay, very good. That'd be great. All right.
I don't know,
Yeah.
I'll leave it to the lawyer.
Yeah, okay.
To write it,
Yeah.
but something like that.
And certainly, it might not be a bad idea to run it by our chairman, the chair of Stormhauser as well. Get his opinion on it before we launch out. But I always like to make sure leadership is okay with what our thought and thinking is in that regard.
I'll work with him as well.
Just if
you
you
would.
online with the citizen.
Yeah, he certainly can, weigh in if he likes, but I think it's a good point to look at. I think we should look at every option that can look at savings and cost reductions. So I think that's a great point, especially in light of the fact we don't get any CARES funding. I know we get a tremendous amount in the county, Chesterfield. Okay, thank you. Anything else on February financials? before we go to, I'm sorry, for the balance sheet, yeah. The balance sheet. Let's look at the balance sheet.
Got a couple of questions on that. I guess
Yes, sir.
this is from my lack of
Mhm.
being an accountant. But I'm looking through the assets, I see two columns, statement of net position and the balance sheet.
Mhm.
And apparently the difference is whether you're dealing with non-operating assets and liabilities or not.
Mhm.
But I'm seeing 1950 and 1951 deferred outflows as an asset. What is a deferred outflow? Diane, you're grinning behind your mask. What does
I
that
am.
mean?
Okay.
A deferred outflow is an asset that's created when you actually put off an expense in the future, like pre-funding a retirement expense.
Isn't that still?
So it's not a prepaid because you don't know exactly what that obligation is going to be, but it's deferred because you're kind of ahead of the game in a certain regard. You also have deferred inflows.
I see that down here below too, and I was going to ask you that question
And
too.
that's where accounting for your retirement programs is coming into play. You're trying to capture the difference between kind of what you've already contributed to the program and what you will contribute in the future.
It's BRS primarily. It's referring to BRS pensions, what you're referring to.
Pensions.
He's
right?
referring to the pension BRS.
The PRS and then
Yeah.
the other one's differential project. And then down below it was, there were the deferred inflows as well in the liabilities section. And well, I guess what I'm really coming down to is to go through all this stuff at the end of the columns. I got two columns.
Mhm.
And one of them says our fund balance is 717 and the other is 1,184,000. But the way I'm reading this, the real fund balance is the 717. Is that correct? The actual fund balance and the others are intangibles. The difference between that and 1.14, is that correct?
The differences between the different ways that governments are required to account. And it's in what certain items, the treatment of how you accrue certain items. The biggest difference here is in your fixed assets.
Okay.
Your
I
balance
guess
sheet
the
column,
question I'm
because it's
getting-
not a usable resource.
Oh,
So in the one view, you don't want to include that in your fund balance because you can't necessarily turn that into cash. You can't pay a bill with it. You can't do anything with it within the next year. The other big thing is what you noted is those other assets of deferred outflows and inflows. That's a significant
They're
accrual,
not real dollars available to be used.
not in the short term. But from an accounting and financial standpoint, those are obligations that your organization down the road.
Right.
Pat knows where I'm going with this, and you're new to it, but we have a policy, we've been trying to get back to $1 million. And that, and I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at the right number, and apparently the right number that we intended is the 717 number, but we're still trying to catch back up there.
The number that we've compared to the 1 million is in the right-hand column, that excludes those deferred inflows and outflows and the,
What line is that? I'm sorry.
on page 14,
Mhm.
yeah, comparing
Page
the
14, yeah.
line title that says total fund balance, I
Yep,
think that's
yeah,
the
yeah,
one.
I
this-
have a 14,
yeah.
I was looking for.
Thank you, this is what I was asking about earlier.
That one is,
Thank you,
this is the one that has all the pages.
thank you, this is what I was asking for.
717, there, I got you. It's, it has to be liquid, like you can grab it, because if we're told you have 3 months to get out of here or something like that. Or you
That's
gotta
what I was
disband,
really coming
or
down to,
get
which is the
away
number
from
that's liquid?
employees. Yeah.
Because whether that's the accounting number or not, I think that was the intent of the commission to have a liquid fund balance.
Yeah, 'cause That was what we.
The total of the right column, the balance sheet column, is that number that we have used as the point of comparison to the $1 million fund balance.
Okay.
Because of that, current versus future obligations point that you're raising. So in that, I think the scenario that Mrs. O'Bannon has brought up a number of times, you know, if we were to find ourselves in a situation for a variety of reasons that we need to dissolve, what are our obligations? And so you asked us to look at things like our outstanding rent liability, those outstanding pension liabilities, those things. And so if you use the column on the left, that is factoring in those pension liabilities.
Correct.
And so the columns are related certainly, but you assigned that $1 million threshold before the reporting requirements required you to present a statement that included those in the balance sheet financial statements.
Yeah.
By saying that.
Yeah, and to the liquidation, as Pat has always said, the liquidation of what, these are obligations we have to pay before we can say we are done. And we are satisfied and we're whole. The organization is whole.
So if you were to have to dissolve, those deferred things would go away.
No, you gotta pay them.
You would have to satisfy those with
You gotta pay those
your
liabilities.
retirement
So
system.
that puts
Yeah,
that
that's
to
the biggie, stuff like
717.
that. You
I
have
guess
to
that-
pay any outstanding debt.
I'm not saying anything's been done incorrectly, but I'm just trying to
3 months of
question
rent or 6 months.
what was the pleasure of the commission? Was
The commission used to only report the right column. And so when you set the $1 million threshold, we were only looking at the right
Correct.
column.
Right.
And then, I think it's a GASB reporting standard has now since required the left column to also be provided. So it is doing some of the work, if you will, for you to be
Yeah.
able to make sure that it's clearly represented what those longer term obligations
Yeah.
are. So your $1 million fits kind of in the middle of this.
That's why I'm glad we got Jim.
Yeah.
No, it's,
Right.
well, this is the reason why we have a finance committee, because we want to make sure that we're paying attention to those things.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On that same fund balance sheet, under fund balance, there is a category called non-spendable. And then below that, there is a category, below that as you come down to unrestricted net surplus special assessments collected. Could you tell me what non-spendable is and what the special assessments collected FY21 are relating to?
The non-spendable, Dr. Newville, is the dollars that were received for support of the Capital Region Collaborative. And they've been
Okay.
reserved for
Yeah.
future use. So that's what you're seeing above the calculation there. Below, where you see in the second block, the special assessments collected.
Yes.
Those are the dollars that were received this fiscal year from member jurisdictions who paid the special assessment. We received funding last fiscal year and this fiscal year, did achieve 100% participation at the requested amount by all 9 jurisdictions.
Okay.
That 30,000 is what was received this year through that effort.
That was what, from New Kent and
Thank you.
Charles City or something? I forgot, who was that from?
If I'm not mistaken, that includes the city of Richmond and Powhatan, and maybe a partial on Hanover, but I'd have to go back and look at the dates of who paid which portion, which fiscal year.
Right. So did some people break it up over dates? I mean, I know there were 2, you could do it over 2
That's right.
years, I think it was.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it was a 2-year, yeah. And also the non-spendable means that, you know, you can't, that's not, as it says, you can't spend that.
It's just a restricted category.
Restricted, I should say restricted.
Okay.
Show about better.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, restricted.
Technically, in this circumstance,
Yes, sir.
the number equals exactly your prepaid expenses and your assets.
Okay, prepaid, which is off, okay.
So
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay,
No, always good question.
thanks for clearing that. It's always good to have a good accounting. Yeah, business. All right, great. Other questions on the balance sheet? Thank you for this. I see now. Excuse me, Martha, I asked you something earlier. I see now. Thank you. I recant. But anyway, other questions?
No, I'm just thinking that was the fund balance.
Mhm.
I mean, after this past year, you know, don't think that couldn't ever happen.
Oh,
Please.
I agree.
Because the we're here because the state required this organization, and who knows, they may just turn around and say, we no longer need you, and goodbye. So that's the reason for that. I've been in other organizations that suddenly found themselves, they had to disband, and in some cases they could start up as something else, but you just always need that, and it's kind of for an emergency anyway, but you
Yes,
really
I
need
agree.
that. That's all.
Yeah, I agree, Pat, your assessment, your conservatism is well received.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions on February financials and anything else regarding, if not, no questions or comments, let's move to item B, 22 budget and member dues.
Thank you. I provided a lot of information to
Okay.
Mr. Holland and tried to put together a more concise memo for this committee. Just to set the context, this topic was referred to the Finance Committee following the Executive Committee and full commission discussions about a charter amendment at our last meeting. This table is certainly not the only way to convey the circumstances, but I tried to come up with the easiest, most clear way. So by way of a little bit of background, for the last 15 or so years, our per capita assessment to member jurisdictions has been 55 cents per capita. Following the economic crisis that started last year, we did take action to reduce our fiscal year 2021, the current fiscal year, local government assessments to 50 cents per capita.
Correct.
And so I've used that as the basis for this discussion. You and the board took action in November, I believe, to continue that reduced assessment for the upcoming fiscal year. And so that is what we use as the calculation for our request to local governments for next year. What you see on the table is the request that was submitted to each of the jurisdictions at that 50 cents per capita, reduced, if you will, rate, and what I titled the whole population. So that is the population of each of the jurisdictions that we have traditionally used to calculate that assessment for member dues. So you can see our total request there is $548,000. The next column in the chart here shows what a potential amount by jurisdiction would be if population is capped at 250,000 based on the discussions that have been occurring with regard to our charter. I was informed that Henrico, and that's footnoted here, while their population is also in excess of 250,000, there is not an intention to reduce the dues on a lower population amount. So their population, as you can see, has gone unchanged from what we requested in November to what's, I think, moving through the local budget process.
And the reason,
At our last meeting, Reverend Nelson made that statement
Yes.
in the meeting that Enrico was not
requesting
that.
and the
Has
reason
that
for
been
that.
further confirmed since then?
The reason for that is that if the larger jurisdictions, two couple things. First, as time goes on, it will cause the smaller jurisdictions to pay more. And we figured everybody's paying per capita, you just pay per capita.
Right.
But the other is, the larger you get, doesn't necessarily mean that you won't use the services. I don't know how else to put it, but you won't. It means generally Henrico has staff to do most of what the PDC folks do, but there are some functions that they do that we don't. So we use those. But that was pretty much the reasoning is if you're going to use it, you just as well pay for it. And that as you get bigger, you pay it, because if you don't, the smaller jurisdictions' costs will go up. That was the original intent of the agreement that the state, again, for the PDC, PlanRVA, was that if you're a large jurisdiction, I hate to say it this way, but I'm just going to say it, the large jurisdictions are supposed to help out the smaller jurisdictions.
Right.
That's the way they do it at the state. They collect all that money and then disperse it to schools on that formula or whatever it is. If you're a rich county, you get less money. If you're a poor county, you get more money, just put it bluntly. But that was part of their plan here. Also, when the state funding comes down, you're supposed to run it through here and stuff like that. I mean, if you read it, that's the way it reads. So basically, that's it. I mean, that's the explanation.
But I appreciate it.
And it's pretty much just it.
Yeah, I appreciate it because it.
And we could save some money, but unfortunately, that would probably flip back to the smaller jurisdictions.
Exactly.
Mr. Holland, has Chesterfield made a formal stance on that, or is this something?
It's not, but it's not final. It's still being discussed, and I have work to do. And I just want to share that with you. So no, Chesterfield's stance is not final. I have work to do on that, and I will. I'm working through that process now. I've started it, but it needs to be completed. So, yeah, because Ms. O'Bannon is absolutely right. We all should help one another. I mean, we're in this together. And this organization is the essence of this region. And so it's my sincere hope that we not lose a penny.
Well,
as a result
I'm
of that.
speaking for Martin, this, her budget is small enough at $50,000.
Yeah,
It's
it's
significant.
Yeah.
Well,
And to know
That's
that one
exactly
way or the other is important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And so, yeah, it's not final in that regard, no. So we're working through that. I've been working, but not finalized. Let me say that again. So thanks, Pat, for sharing.
Well, that's my watered down basic version.
Okay.
And now I don't like using the term core. And so like Nova, I will apologize, but that's the quick version. Smaller county with less income.
We've got some smaller counties that are definitely not poor.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying
I understand the essence of
that's
your
what part of the intent was. And I guess
You're
if you read the articles of incorporation or whatever we've got
Right.
for this organization, I forgot what they're titled,
Mhm.
but that's kind of what it was, the state's
Yeah.
plan.
Well,
Yeah.
same thing you told me, I didn't take it that way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, see, that was like the quick version.
Yeah, that was good clarity. Thank you so much, Mr. Bannon. I appreciate that. And my heart is with this organization and with this continued funding stream as such. That's where my heart is as well. And so that's my hope. So I just want to share that with you.
But being realistic, I keep thinking at some point the state's going to just say, let's just throw all that out and do something different. I swear they go down there and they go nuts. So,
Yeah.
sorry. But that's the other part of it.
Right, absolutely. Okay,
What they plan for next, let's just throw that out and try something different. It's like,
okay.
how we always.
We appreciate that. We certainly appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's excellent analysis there. Excellent comments to that end as well. Anything else someone would like to say about that? Well, I can tell you what my heart is. My heart is with PlanRVA. And support the.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is relevant in this moment, but just as an update, Richmond City Council approved the last version of the RVA, PlanRVA charter last night.
Oh, when you said the last version, maybe help me understand.
So that is the latest version that has been circulated. We refer to it as version 9.
Okay.
And
This is
it
leaving the old.
is the
Yeah.
version that
Mhm.
continues to appoint membership to the commission to jurisdictions based on population up
Okay.
to 250,000. So version 8 included the additional tiers,
Okay.
pushing up to 400,000 in population. This leaves it as it is currently in the charter at 250,000.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it doesn't include the.
That's
new
right.
tiers.
Have you looked at it, Chesterfield? Because we haven't even looked at it in Henrico. We were waiting for the final version,
Yeah.
basically, and then we were gonna go over it again. It might have to go back again, right? What,
Um,
we'll have to
so
go through one
Version
time.
8 was approved by Goochland, New Kent, and Charles City.
Okay.
Then we collectively learned of the concerns with regard to the one provision about the population tiers. And so I believe that we heard back from Goochland, New Kent, and Charles City, as well as the other jurisdictions, that they would be prepared to schedule this for the agenda once there had been resolution. And so I believe that the next appropriate step would be for me to inform the local government administrators that Richmond City took action last night on the version 9. And if they are interested in scheduling version 9 for moving it forward on their local agenda, if they may do so, and please keep me informed.
Because I really haven't even
I
looked at it.
I have, I'm, thanks for sharing, Dr. Newbill. I had no idea. I'm assuming that, I didn't know that, so I haven't talked
Yes.
to Chesterfield today. So thanks
Yeah,
for sharing. And so
No
that
worries.
but
This
the
was
full-
just last night. So,
approved last night.
City
Okay.
approved
yes.
version,
And Martha, I'll make sure you get a copy. If that's what you're needing to have for your files, I'll ask that be sent today.
Yes, thank you.
I just
Okay.
figured that once everybody got finished with it, it might need one more go through, a few jurisdictions, I don't know.
Yeah, Mr. Vitolfus has informed us that they will schedule it last, so I'm expecting maybe May or June it would come to your agenda. And I think many of the others are just waiting to put it on their agenda
Okay.
for, the upcoming meetings and.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for letting me know. I did not, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
On the fiscal 2022 budget, I just thought I would do a little bit of an overview of what we're thinking as far as timeline and process.
Okay.
We'd like to come to the committee at your April meeting. As we discussed, we'll have the March financials. We'll have, I think, a stronger projection of where we expect the year-end results to be. We'd like to be able to bring back points of conversation to you in April also about next fiscal year. So as Mr. Pearson indicated, I mean, we have a couple of sort of missing points, data points right now that I'm hoping will clear themselves up by the time we meet again. But we have some discussions underway with CBTA about the potential of renewing the service agreement there. We do have word that the 2021 General Assembly session has resulted in additional funding from the state for PDCs, so we will be expecting $14,000 more than we have in years past. So we're elated with that good news. And we're working on a few more grant opportunities. So as those points of information come clearer, we'll be able to plug those in. Dan is conceptualizing the format and everything now to be able to work on next fiscal year's budget. So we'll have those things. I know that we've discussed and have talked about a little bit the potential of the transition to a new financial management system. And so we'll be bringing back proposals with regard to that and what we think the return on investment would be with that kind of an investment. And as you know, we would like to be able to look at new positions for the coming fiscal year to meet our work demands. And I do think that is another option, an opportunity for us to capture more of the revenue. So, we'll be bringing those topics back to you for discussion in April. We are planning to have an April full commission meeting canceled. So the full commission will come back in May, and that'll be the first.
Why do you anticipate that?
We don't have business for.
Usually April and May and are really busy. Gosh.
We typically are bringing a budget, at least a high level overview to the board in April, but given where we are with a lot of these uncertainties, and this committee won't have had the chance to meet before the full commission meeting is scheduled for April, and talking with Mr. Spoonhour, we thought it might be best to cancel. So the thought would be that in May, the executive committee and full commission would have their glances at what you are doing at the committee level with the budget. And then in June, just like we did last year, June would be the target date for the full commission to act on the budget for the fiscal 2022 year.
Okay.
What do you think about that timeline? Does it?
If you're asking the full commission to sit here and see this stuff for the first time and vote at it on their first meeting, I'm not comfortable with that. What are your thoughts?
Last year we reviewed the
I'm
budget
comfortable
in May.
with being here.
Yeah, last year we reviewed the budget in May, and then the board took action in June. So I was thinking we'd follow that same.
Okay.
So we'll see
I thought
first.
you were
So
saying
we'll
that
see
we're
the first
gonna act
one.
on it.
I think this committee will see as much information as we have in April, and then it'll come back to you in May.
In May,
But in
okay.
between that, the full commission will also have
It gets
seating.
it in that. They'll
And then
be
you'll
in
do
that.
refinement in May and it'll come back for full, yeah.
Are we under
Okay.
any obligations? I mean, is there a timeline that we're obligated to?
Not like
Because, you know,
local governments.
Counties are, I mean, we definitely have to have certain items in at certain times, but
No,
we don't have to follow that.
before the fiscal year starts.
Okay.
Okay.
We always have to have them have them go out and change it all over.
Well, I mean, it's still, you have to have a pretty good skeleton you put everything on, and then you vote on that, and then, yeah, if you change this line and that line, it's not the whole thing, but, yeah.
My goal was to be,
Required.
to create the opportunity for a first look and then a request for approval for the commission and
Yeah,
the
you
same
have
for
to
the
do it
executive
that way,
committee.
I
But for this committee to have April, May, and June, so that you are, you know, leading the
Okay, well, that's good, Martha.
process.
We can work with that. Martha, are there any unique challenges relative to CBTA and the services we provide them? Any concerns there, staffing, other things? Because I understand they're still getting off and still getting ready to fly.
Is
So
the
person.
CBTA really, with the TPO, isn't the TPO the one that really is
We
handling
provide.
this stuff?
PlanRVA is the entity that is providing the support services to the CBTA.
Mhm.
In practicality, I mean, Mr. Parsons and Ms. Mueller have been, you know, carrying the lion's share of the workload, myself and the two of them, you know, who are also primary staff to the TPO. So there's a lot of overlap in personnel that are assigned to the two.
One of the main reasons for pairing with TPO, and I'm gonna put this out, but had to do with being able to finance things and get grants, accept grants, and have the basis of the money part of it. Is that through the PDC? I thought it was through the TPO.
The CBTA will take action later this summer, but I
Bonding
think,
capacity, that's it, I'm sorry.
I think that the CBTA is still deliberating on whether the TPO's regional priorities are going to be the CBTA's regional priorities. So
I can't speak for the full CBTA by any means, but I am on the finance committee. And I would be, if I were a betting man, I would probably put odds on the fact that PlanRVA is going to continue working as to do our administrative work over the next fiscal year. The financial means we've been using the contracts of Chesterfield for financial advisors and for the banking contracts. Those are in place. All jurisdictions at this point have received at least 2 distributions from CBTA on that. The city is responsible for the auditing services and is working with that. Dr. Newbill's on here with us. She may, I don't know if she wants to address that. But things have been moving pretty darn well, I think, for everything. And like I said, there's negotiations going on, but I do not foresee that a separation between PlanRVA and CBTA
Okay.
coming yet. I don't
I
think
just
we're
thought it
ready
was
for
with
that.
the TPO, not.
Well, no, actually, because the TPO, just like the CBTA, both of them contract with PlanRVA for services. And now we are using some of the same people, but CBTA is not passing through TPO to PlanRVA. We're working directly with PlanRVA in terms of acquiring the services of the staff that we're utilizing for
Okay.
plus TPO actually doesn't have any staff either. They're contracting with PlanRVA. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's
but-
correct. That's my
but
understanding.
all
Well, but
Yeah,
the
TPO pays
TPO
them
is
to
a
do the work.
separate, is a totally separate entity from the PDC. The two are totally separate. They just happen to be contracting.
Yep.
With
And CBTA and the TPO.
Because people get
Right,
confused on
right.
that, and their budgets are all mixed up together, but
Yeah.
I hate to
We're
say it, but that's,
coordinated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all Dick Glover used to talk about. He talked for a half an hour on that. They should be totally separate. But what it always brings up is the fact that one is federally mandated and the other is state mandated.
Okay.
So you have to keep that in the, one is
Okay. I was
it's a
thinking,
federal stuff, the other is
and
state
state
stuff.
that is a difference. Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of what additional needs might be there, anything you might need in that regard to provide
Yeah,
exemplary service. Because at the end of the day, and this I share with my team in Chesterfield, at the end of the day, we want to be cost effective and efficient. And certainly we don't want excessive bureaucracy, but we want to be able to provide the very best service that I think the client expects.
yeah, as Mr. Peterson said so well, the finance committee has asked us to put a proposal together for them to consider, and that'll be coming at their April finance committee meeting.
CDT.
Yes, and so we do believe that additional staffing is necessary to assign to the work for the CBTA. And so if that were approved, we would feed that to, as a request to this board, commission board, to hire new personnel.
Good, thank you. That's just my
But it would show that it was money coming from the CBTA.
It should be, that should be in our budget for the next
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
Is the
exactly.
expected income from CBTA.
To offset those expenses.
Yeah, it expects to offset the cost, because we shouldn't be doing it out of loss. It's my premise. We should be doing a service out of loss. Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments? This has been excellent.
I've got one.
Yes, sir.
It's really nice to actually see you guys.
Yeah. Hey.
This is
I see my attorney. I broke feet today. I say, hey, I'm coming out to meet. I'm in here to meet you all. I'm waving at you from here too.
So
Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you, Dr. Newbill, for being with us today. We appreciate you.
On that note, I will say, and Mr. Peterson has been here for a number of the in-person meetings, but this setup, I think, has worked well for this size group. Don't have the microphone equipment to be able to accommodate a full commission meeting in the space. But for committee meetings, I think we are positioned well to be able to get back to in-person if that's what you'd like.
I'm 100% for it. I think we're much more effective when we can be here.
I do like in person too. I mean, I'm great, from home to do that. And I have classes last Tuesdays, Thursdays in the fall, and that was really constraining me. Now Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. So I got to get to meet with Joe though, Joe Casey. We got meetings to do.
So we can accommodate a meeting of 8 people around this table, and I think the audio and visual and everything works sufficiently.
Well, you could get a few more people in here, but I don't
The
think
problem is the mic can't pick
Microphone.
up the voice, so.
I'm going to ask, could we ask that question, how well this is working for those? I mean, really, I want to encourage all the people up here on the screen to join us.
So we just
here,
lost Pat
going
from
forward.
New Camp.
But,
get Cynthia and Neil and John.
Okay.
Let me say, I much prefer in person as long as we can have all of appropriate precautions. And so I'd much rather be at the table. So for the future, at least as long as I'm representing Richmond, I will try to do so.
fantastic.
Dr. Newbill, does the sound come through adequately for you?
Yes, it does.
Good.
So it's
Yeah.
an option if someone needs to.
Hey, everybody, it's Neil. Thank you for all your hard work today. It sounded and looked really good. I know some of you had your laptop cameras on so you can get up close. So very good experience as I was eavesdropping.
Talking about you.
we did mention you, Mr. Chairman.
I heard.
In a good way.
And just for what it's worth, so you save me an email, I am fully in support and I appreciate the guidance and wisdom of this board to ask our landlord for some sort of break on our lease. So Martha, we've talked about similar things, so I'm in full agreement with that. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, just one last item, and I'm probably, because this is my first meeting, in the contracting by CBTA with PlanRVA, are we adding an administrative cost to that as well?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, Mr. Holland recommended this when we negotiated the agreement this year. We invoiced the CBTA for our personnel costs. That is the salary, the fringe applied, and the indirect applied. And we also add a 10% administrative fee.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments before we adjourn? We have to, I know we love it here, but we have to adjourn.
I gotta do some work, Pat.
I know you do, Pat. Yeah, Eric, any comments, sir? Any comments?
No, sir. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you both. All right.